truthfully, I think this nigga Kendrick might have just destroyed Drake's motor skills because he can't rap no more. Like, listening to his music, it don't even sound the same.
You see, the damage to the motor functions might be a bit of a over-exaggeration. There's definitely something done. I want to look at this psychologically, right? I don't want to really look at the album for the music. The album, Iceman, at least, carries a character to a degree, more so like a persona or something of that sort. So we're going to kind of look into that as well, because I find it interesting. I like to break things down like this. So that's what we're going to do. I believe that Iceman is a representation of a public fall of some sort. And typically with public falls, when it's related to egotistical people, that comes with some like identity fracture, right? So what that would do is it would pretty much force the mind of, we're not gonna say Drake, but let's say Iceman, or who's pre-Iceman, right? Pre-Iceman, Nice Man, he said, is a bar. It's a literal bar in the album. Shit is garbage. So we're talking about Nice Man right now. Nice Man's mind is forced to split into like versions of itself. It will build a battlefield out of the meaning that is created within the versions of itself, just to have control over the ego still. So what usually starts this shit is the fall off, right? It's not really even him like feeling like he lost, because Iceman doesn't feel like he lost. It's everyone else looking at him and thinking that he lost, right? It's the public's opinion on the fact that he lost previous to this, right? So that, at least in the psychological world, that matters, right? Because it doesn't allow your brain to process it as, oh, I lost here. It more so processes it as like, my position of power, or the like gas that you get from having all those people always telling you that you won is gone. And some people just hate that feeling, right? I think after Not Like Us and Euphoria dropped, everyone definitely saw him as the loser. You know, he didn't even have a response. It was nothing that he came out that gave any substance to any justification or nothing. So this is exactly where he started to feel that disruption and collapse, right? There's many aspects in which you can see that it truly did affect him in this manner. And I mean, not in the ways that he reacted, but just by general ways of working, right? I mean, Not Like Us was pretty psychologically important, right? Because it just kind of showed him, it was a cultural like humiliation ritual, right? Like everybody was playing it. It was viral. It was like memed. It was in the clubs. It was just celebrated publicly. That's when everybody chose its side for real.
Why the fall off is so important is because this is just the trigger event. This is the one thing that sets everything else into, process. So this is a destabilizing social layer in its own, just because of the narrative shifting away from you when you have an ego that's based on nothing but control and dominance and, weirdo nigga shit.
Then this is when shit starts to get a little shaky. At least if you're already fitting into, this pattern here, right?
You start to recognize that your control over everyone starts to waver. Beyond the narrative, you knew that you had this sense of like a grip on your fandom, and you're not gonna like losing that control. And most people start to trip out egotistically and project that kind of shit.
And they'll mask it behind this like, oh, I'm aware type shit, you get what I mean? But that publicness, the fact that they're aware and everyone else is, that is what turned it from this offensive state of standing or position into this defensive explanation constantly from him. Like you hear like, you have earlier tracks that felt more aggressive and confident, but by the time like The Heart Part 6 released, the energy changed dramatically, bro. Like dude started defending allegations. He was explaining his motivations, trying to clarify his intentions and shit. Even insisting the fact that nigga Kendrick was misled intentionally, and it's just multiple different things that can describe a track as defensive. But that shift matters psychologically, because when your identity is stable, you usually would attack outward. When your identity destabilizes, your energy starts to turn inward. You start to look for justification. You try to find some narrative correction, a self-explanation. When Family Matters released, somehow people still felt like it was some kind of competition, like Drake could still hold his own, but The Heart Part 6 kind of finished that nigga. I mean, I won't lie to you, on top of Not Like Us, right? And I mean, if you pay attention to his reaction alone to both of them, being that person, you wouldn't stand being in that position. You just would hate it, probably run into. Or the next issue that you will run into is the internal fracture, right? Your identity will just take a hit way beyond comprehension.
But it won't be egotistical at all. It's really about the character that you've built up for yourself and the character that you've adapted to from seeing how everyone else made your character. So it's kind of like what the world gave you and what you gave yourself, right? And I know by saying what character you built for yourself sounds egotistical, but people do it sometimes for protection, right? His entire public identity was built around adaptability, being impossible to remove, or just this insane sense of dominance. But the public reaction to the back and forth created this conflicting reality between him. He realized like someone else was perceived widely as winning. Something else became culturally overwhelming. The memes and discourse shifted heavily against him, and even just the neutral spaces started treating him as if he was the defeated side. So now the two truths exist simultaneously. That internal identity that he has, where I'm the biggest, is completely conflicted by the external reality of the public momentum going against him. So the brain hates unresolved contradictions. It's just how psychology works. So psychologically, that person will begin reframing all these events to preserve their continuity. This person misunderstood, people are being biased, this wasn't judged fairly. It's just so many different ways that a person's brain can take this certain situation when they're cornered this way, right? The easiest thing is he's protecting himself from nothing. You sit there and you stop yourself from being vulnerable with your fans, and that gets you nowhere. That actually harms you and sets you back. When people are looking for that, people are looking for more vulnerability. Nobody wants to hear no more Iceman and you're so cool and you don't give a fuck about shit. We actually kind of like hearing you talk about the crazy shit that you're going through with your son, and how I'm pretty sure your son feels like your father is his older brother by the way that you work in the family. Like, that's a pretty, damn, that's crazy perspective. I completely understand him trying to maybe teach other people lessons because he's Drake. I mean, dude has money, he has the fame, and if he hasn't been able to find love through money, then it doesn't work. So I appreciate him trying to get that perspective out there. But right now, you could throw that in there, but like, you got a lot to worry about right now, gang. Your career is drowning, right? But psychologically, now you're bleeding out because this internal persona that you created for yourself has been destroyed, and you're way better than that. So that doesn't happen, right? It just doesn't make sense.
And it will create this emotional cocktail where you'll have like humiliation, fucking disbelief, fucking a whole bunch of shit, right? We can break down how many emotions just that one thought can bring to your psyche, right? But most importantly, your mind will start rejecting the idea that this outcome is just a valid reality for you. So instead of processing it as just the normal loss, like, oh, take it on the chin, I'm gonna take that L, bro, it is whatever, like, fuck it, you then take it to this next level where it's like, oh, it's impossible. Like, you start to insult the order of life in the universe, and something needs some kind of meaning to be attached to it immediately, like this was the devil or some shit, you know what I mean? And that's where the psyche stops accepting even just neutrality. Like, it's just either I was benefiting from this or it was trying to work against me. So now as we go down, it's like kind of the more impactful that these things get, right? Because this is like a domino effect. It kind of happens almost chronologically. Not every time, but just granted, it most cases would work this way, right? So next you would begin to just have this self-concept of yourself become unstable. So if you built your identity and it was anchored solely in like respect, or solely in dominance, or solely in violence or some shit, or solely being, at the top of the hill, then losing that shit will just like completely remove your whole coordinate system in your brain, bro. Like your whole fucking function, your whole motor functions, like I said, will just bust on you. Pause.
Because you have to realize these things were built as protections. Psychologically, this original self feels socially wounded, so the mind will create a version that cannot be embarrassed. It won't be emotionally reached. It turns criticism into proof of uniqueness, and that's why like your post-defeat persona often will become colder, Iceman, or more theatrical, Iceman, more mythological, or less human, Iceman, right? So that idea psychologically fits because coldness becomes this like emotional invulnerability, and you convert it into your branding of your identity because you know that in this moment it would suit you and make you look better because you're trying to just create that for yourself, right?
This is where people often begin to get this like weird emptiness feeling, right? This like detachment and this like there's no longer fucking stability in your mind because you've been fucking destabilized in almost every which way at this point that you've constructed yourself. So,
and with that, most people really don't react to complete destabilization in one clean way, just like everything else in the world, especially when the shit is just public. The reactions really do cluster into like a few patterns, right? But some of the responses usually come from like denial. You know, niggas try to downplay the events, anger as like some kind of force of nature. You know, and it just feels safer to be angry rather than feel shameful, right? Most people rather feel like they did this to me, or a victim mentality kind of vibe. Or they even fragment their old fucking identity, which you see right now with Iceman. Like, oh, that was the old me. That no longer matches my reality, but this new me, yeah, that nigga ain't formed yet, but he's ready for all of this shit. Like, psychologically, they really do live in between, though. So, it's crazy. And he's obsessed over the narrative. You know, he's trying to always stabilize emotionally, always trying to stabilize you to make you understand his point of view. Oh, this changed me. This revealed who people really are. This was necessary. Now I see the truth. So, it's like he's constructing this persona right in front of you, really. And he's retaliating and seeking control right in front of you. And he is also collapsing right in front of you. The one thing that people don't take into consideration, at least psychologically, is that when people do build these identities, that they feel permanent to them. And when they do get that realization, that reality check, like, holy shit, it's not permanent, that hits really deep. Like, oh man, this is not what I thought it was. That's scary for a lot of people, actually. But under the guise of him trying to protect himself throughout this entire, I want to say, generation to a decade, he's been doing well. You know, he's kept himself in a very nice bubble. But at the end of the day, your time does have to come. If you live your entire life off of putting defenses up, at some point you will be attacked. If you continue living your life with gates up, at some point they will be attacked. I'm not saying if you leave your gates all the way down now, that's the smartest thing. But don't focus on the walls like you're Donald Trump. Like, think about what's inside the walls, right? But many in these situations turn that loss into some kind of story. Instead of like, oh, I just lost publicly, it will evolve a narrative into like some greatness with isolation, or being hated is the proof of my elevation or my evolution or something. Like, come on now, that shit don't work, bro. I heard from someone a long time ago on the internet say that if someone cannot emotionally dominate the situation anymore, they may just try to dominate its interpretation. So that's why certain artists, after public losses, often create projects centered around betrayal or loneliness, because it's like the person's essentially rebuilding their identity through the narrative. It's not necessarily because they're just consciously manipulating, but because the psyche is trying to preserve continuity between your old self-image and the current reality that you're forced to go through, right?
And now the breaking down is not over, right? So now you're left with two versions of just reality in its own. And those two versions would be your internal perception and the external reality, I guess, would just sum it up. Because your internal perception will tell you, I'm still that nigga. The external reality is showing you, you just got shit on, right? So your mind can't hold both of those clearly at the same time. And there's this thing in psychology, I remember in my first year, that we learned called reconciliation through narrative distortion or some shit. And it's where you're not really lying, but you're reframing a question, right? It's like your interpretation begins replacing just facts, right? It's like, I'm not crying, it was just a tear running down my face. It doesn't represent the full picture. This moment will be understood over time. Is like a you get what I mean? Like, you're trying to reframe it to a degree, but you understand that this is critical for you, because the brain prefers a coherent myth sometimes over like little pieces of the truth. So if you have a little pieces of the truth, your brain will choose the little myth that you've built, and you can like prove as evidence to yourself, I guess, right? More than that, which is just human nature, right? So remember, since you're reframing the truth now consistently, this is reframing your reality almost to a degree, or who you are, right? So the next phase to this would be a persona formation, right? Where people begin to create their next character. It's kind of crazy, but this is what typically happens when people create characters as a result of certain functions or certain situations, right? So at this stage, your psyche it starts to solve the destabilization that we were speaking about earlier by splitting functionality into like separate compartments of yourself, right? So it's not multi-personalities. Almost just say 2 compartments is all you would need in this scenario. All you need is your core self, who feels the injury, who carries that shame and processes the emotional contradictions. And then you need the constructed or the public persona that you put out that mask, that has the emotional controlled output and the elevated tone of self-perception and all of that shit. So that would be identity compartmentalization, right? The split just won't be random though. It's like something you just kind of click into. It's like an adaptation, right? So you continue through with this public performance, and you gain protection consistently over time through emotionally overloading that public performance and continuing it, right? You change publicly. That creates an urge to like reign dominance and restore the narrative control. You saw this continue culturally even after the main diss with like subliminals and continued references. It's like the legal conflict, even containing Not Like Us, relates to that. And psychologically, unresolved status conflicts tend to linger because public humiliation doesn't feel finished internally, especially for those whose identity is heavily tied to legacy, domination, perception, and hierarchy, for sure. Call me sick, call me whatever you want. In my opinion, the most interesting part about this beef between Drake and Kendrick is watching the psychological seal release off of his mind as the general consensus of like the people, you know, the artists that he's built up a fan base towards or from, quote unquote, how their minds literally switch, their interpretations of him switch. His protection is no longer being useful. The fucking armor he's wearing is just stripped. That person suddenly has to survive not being invincible, right? It's like Hercules when he lost his powers of being a demigod and he had to survive being just a normal human. You know, I find that to be the most interesting part. And that's not something that I play in defense of Drake, because not many people can make it through that game. But if he does, touche, right? If he makes it through this, touche. And if you have been around for this slow yet satisfying burn
You could tell that it's been a process. It started with X exposing him for being, widely known for stealing music. Some people knew before that, but he made it a big thing. Then came Pusha T exposing him about his son. Supposedly some people knew about that, but then Pusha made it a big thing. And then Kendrick just came through and just shot the man while he's on the ground. But again, he wasn't even on the ground because Pusha nor X really didn't hurt him as much. So it was necessary, bro. I personally didn't like the album, and I will stand on that. To me, it felt like an emotional train wreck. To me, it felt like he was crying the entire time and just trying to get some kind of revenge and hinting back to the times that he knew he lost, and he knew that he lost the general consensus and a whole bunch of bullshit. And that's okay. Niggas like to cry, right? But I just wanted to break this down psychologically, and honestly, that's it. Tell me what you think.